Welcome to Fool's Key Tarot. I'm Ben, and this is a daily reading for Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Let's see what the cards have in store for us. First, I'll draw a card for the past. This is the Nine of Swords. Now I'll draw a card for the present, the Wheel of Fortune reversed, and then the future, the Ace of Pentacles reversed. So beginning with the past, it looks like there was a period of time recently where you were very anxious or worried over some future event that you were very unsure how it would go. And while there was the possibility of it going very well, there was also a possibility of it going very poorly. And you were more focused on the negative aspect. For some reason, you felt like that was either more likely or you had a premonition that it was going to work out that way. It's very possible that this event or this outcome doesn't actually relate to you personally, but rather to somebody else that you care about. So somebody else was maybe going through something that could have either worked out very well or very badly, and you're worried on their behalf. So this is something that you've been feeling recently, anxious or concerned. Maybe you haven't been sleeping well or have just been on pins and needles, perhaps in a bad mood, perhaps tired because you're not sleeping very well, or because a lot of your energy is spent worrying and thinking about this future scenario in which you're very afraid that something bad might happen. And you're definitely more focused on the negatives than the positives. The positives are there, the potential at least for the positives are there, but you find yourself fixated on what could go wrong and imagining the worst case scenarios. And this has led to sleepless nights or going over and over again in your head about all the different ways that it might go wrong. And you might feel helpless because, especially if it's somebody else rather than you that you are worried on behalf of, you might feel like you wish you could do something, but maybe they're far away. Maybe it's not your business. Maybe you just don't have any power in the situation. And so you wish you could help tip things towards the good outcome, but you can't. And that is just adding to your sense of frustration or anxiety. So this has been your mental state recently. Maybe you're still in that place now. Maybe you moved past that in the present, but you definitely have been very worried about something in the past, and it has been eating away at you. And coming to the present, it looks like something surprising happened that is not any of the options you were considering before. You were playing in your head all the different ways that the scenario might go, and you were more focused on the negatives and the positives, but you were aware of positive outcomes as well. You just felt more emotionally grabbed by the potential negatives, and so that's where your mind was at. But you imagined a lot of different possible outcomes, even if the negatives were what you were more fixated on. But what really happened was something that you didn't expect at all. None of the possibilities that you imagined as you thought about this over and over again is what happened. And I think that what happened is a pretty strange mixture of good and bad. It wasn't the worst case scenario that you feared and spent a lot of time imagining or worrying about, but something bad still happened. However, there is something salvageable that has come out of this situation too. So there's good and there's bad, and it's just complicated. So you didn't get a clean answer of either avoiding the thing that you were worried about or having the bad scenario that you feared come to pass. Instead, it's sort of this weird middle ground where it's nothing you expected and it's not a clean good or bad. It's complicated, it's surprising, and you might still be picking through the consequences and trying to figure out how good is this? How bad is this? What are the good implications? What are the bad implications? How am I going to move forward? Or how is this other person going to move forward if you are worried over someone else, which I think is very possible with the Nine of Swords. And you may have been helpless before, but now that the event has come to pass and this rather complicated outcome has occurred, maybe now you do have the ability to impact the situation. Although, with the Wheel of Fortune reversed, I actually think it's more likely that you still cannot control what is happening. Maybe you have some amount of influence now that you didn't have before, now that the situation has resolved or moved past the inflection point that you spent time worrying about. But I think there's definitely a sense of either you still cannot really affect what's going on, which is feeding into that feeling of helplessness. But another possibility is that you can influence what's going on, but that when you try to influence things one way, they end up moving the other way. So maybe you tried to help and it made things worse. Or maybe you tried to do one thing and it ended up causing a very different thing. That might not be good or bad, could be neutral, could just be complicated. But if you are able to exercise any control over the situation, I think that you're finding that your actions aren't having the desired consequences. And that leads again to a sense of helplessness, but in a very different form. Because whereas before you couldn't really affect the situation, now you can, but your actions are not having the consequences that you expected. And so therefore, you can't really influence the situation in a way that's predictable and understandable, which is another form of helplessness. And so now that this outcome has been reached, you no longer have to worry so much about these possible bad outcomes because it's happened and it's time to move forward. But this resolution is complicated and you do have to deal with the fallout and figure out how to move forward. And that's also not easy. And in particular, I think you're going to find that everything you try to do leads in a different direction that you didn't want to go, but that doesn't mean the new direction is bad. It may be that there is some way forward that is good, but that you didn't think of or didn't try to push towards. And if you push in one direction and move in another direction, well, maybe that other direction is actually a great direction to go in. So this is not all doom and gloom, and to say that you're trying to help and just making it worse. That's possible. But another possibility is that your actions actually have good consequences, it's just not the kinds of consequences that you wanted to have. But maybe there was a path that was good or productive that you didn't see, and so you didn't try to move in that direction. But in this complex situation where whatever you're trying to do might result in something other than what you attempted, well, that new outcome might actually be better than what you were even trying to do. So even though there is a sense of confusion and a sense of powerlessness, not that you cannot act, but that it's hard to predict the relationship between action and outcome. Despite that, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think there's definitely a bright side to find, but there's also definitely complications and problems. So whereas before you were very fixated on the negative, now it's more a mixture of positive and negative, all kind of scrambled together and hard to pick through. And I think in the present, you're dealing with this developing situation as you try to figure out what happened, how are we going to move forward, what's the right thing to do. Now, looking towards the future with the Ace of Pentacles reversed, I think that we have a sense of leaving a secure zone and going out into a more dangerous area where there is more risk but more reward. And this might not be voluntary. You might be pushed out of an area of comfort and safety. In fact, that might be one of the unintended consequences of the Wheel of Fortune reversed here. So I think that probably, whether it's you or the person who you were worried about in the past, as you deal with the consequences of the situation and try to figure out what's the good, what's the bad, how do I try to maximize the good and minimize the bad, I said that you were going to take actions that might not have the consequence that you expected. I think that one of those consequences is going to end up being somebody, either you or the person you were worried about, or somebody else involved in the situation, is going to be taken away from a place of comfort and security. And while that sounds bad, and it does have some negative connotations, really, this might be the kick out the door that this person needed, or that you needed, if this is about you. So actually, I think that it's sort of a blessing in disguise that your actions are not having the outcomes that you expected. Because I don't think that you would choose to leave this place of safety, or that you would choose to kick somebody else out of their safety zone, because that's a hard thing to do. It's nice to stay where things are comfortable and predictable. And even if there is some promise of a potential reward if you leave, it's almost always the easier choice to just default to staying where you're at, keeping what you know and what is familiar and what is working in place without risking some major change that might work out but might not work out. That's a scary thing to do. It's hard to do. And if there was a very straightforward relationship between what you were trying to do and what happens, then maybe you would have never chosen that path for you or for the person that you're worried about. However, because of the complex present where things are kind of topsy-turvy and behaving in unpredictable ways, I think that one of your actions or the actions of the person that you were worried about and now interacting with and helping them deal with their situation, one of those actions is going to cause somebody to leave their comfort zone, leave where they feel safe and comfortable, and go out and take a risk. Try something that they were afraid to do before or had too much self-doubt to attempt before. And the sort of chaotic nature of the present is going to lead to that outcome, which will feel scary and maybe negative at the moment that it happens. It might feel like you made a mistake by causing this because you didn't mean to. And you might feel bad because it seems like a bad thing that someone had their comfort or safety taken away from them. But really, I think it's a necessary step that no one in the situation would have necessarily had the courage to do all on their own, but thanks to the chaos of the present, it will happen anyways. And I think it will end up being a good thing, because I don't think that when you are evicted or when the person is evicted from this place where they are guarded and protected and safe, I don't think it's permanent. I think there is definitely a sense of the potential for return, maybe not immediately. Otherwise, there's not really any risk because you could always just go right back. But with the Wheel of Fortune, there is a sense of cycles and returning and the wheel turning, coming back to where it started. So I think that this is not some kind of permanent severance between safety and comfort and the person who benefited from those things. Instead, it's a nudge out the door and the potential to return at a later time, but not immediately. And so this risk is somewhat contained. It can only be so bad because you can always return eventually to the place of safety and recover and mitigate any bad things that may have happened when you left. Now, it might be good things that happen when you leave, but that's the whole thing of risk versus safety and the trade-off of risk and reward is that it's going to be risky to leave. That's why you didn't want to do it before, or why they didn't want to do it before. If this is the person that you were worried about, not yourself. But with risk, it might work out, it might not. The cards aren't going to tell us exactly what's going to happen. But the point is that if it doesn't work out well, there is the potential to then return and recover and recuperate and then try again, leaving from that base of safety once more in the future, now with more knowledge and more experience. Now, if it works out really well, then great. But the nature of risk is that we just don't know in advance. And that's why you needed, or they needed, that nudge out the door. And that's what the Wheel of Fortune is going to help with, is making sure that that push happens, even if nobody in the situation is quite ready to take that leap or to push someone else out into the open like that. But it's going to happen anyways. And it's going to be okay. It might not work out well this time, but there will be the chance of recovery. There will be the chance of mitigating the downside, if there is a downside. And so I think this is going to be a blessing in disguise. Things feel very chaotic right now. You might feel helpless. You might feel unsure about how to act or how to help. But do your best and do not expect all of your actions to have the consequences that you meant. But I would expect your actions to have consequences that are good, as long as you mean well by them and that you think through them carefully. But I think you do mean well. Even if you were more fixated on the negatives and the positives, that was from a place of concern. You care about this person or you care about the situation, and therefore your actions and your thoughts are coming from a place of wanting to help. And so even if you don't have the effect on the situation that you wanted or expected, I think you will have a positive impact on the situation. And if it seems negative at first, because it seems like maybe somebody had something taken away from them that they relied upon, don't beat yourself up too fast. Instead, wait and let the situation play out, because I bet it'll actually end up better than it will seem at first. So if you try to help and it seems like you're actually not helping, wait a minute and don't jump to any conclusions or feel bad that you messed up the situation. Instead, help that person deal with the risks that they now face, help protect them now that they are not in a place that has as much safety. Or if it's you who's left this place of safety, then be on guard, be vigilant, because some of the guardrails are gone, but risks can be very good to take if they're calculated and if you're careful, and if you have the ability to retreat if they don't go well. And I think that ability is there. If it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to come back or somehow retreat from this risk, I think that door will open up, even if it seems closed right now. The Wheel of Fortune promises that things come back, things return, and not always in the same way that they were there. Things might be changed when you come back, but you'll still have access to some of that safety and some of that comfort that you're leaving behind, or that someone else is leaving behind as a result of this situation. So I think the good news is your period of anxiety and worry is over, but now you are in a period of chaos and confusion as you deal with the fallout of the thing that you were worried about. And even if you're not sure how to help or what to do, I think you have a role to play in this situation. So don't just sit back and let things happen. Take agency and try to help. And do not worry if you seem to just confuse the matter even more, or maybe even your attempts to help actually cause something that seems bad, because sometimes things that seem bad at first are blessings in disguises. And I think that that's going to be the case here. So take a long view of the situation. Wait for things to play out before you beat yourself up too much over something that you may have caused unintentionally. And whether it's you or somebody else who was kicked out of their comfort zone by the results of this situation, you do want to be careful. You do want to try to mitigate your risks. Just because you're assuming some risk doesn't mean that you should just go all in and take the biggest possible risk. So be on guard, either for yourself or for that other person, but embrace the risk, embrace the freedom. It's scary to not have that comfort or that protection, but there are advantages also to not having those comforts or protections. And as long as that's the situation you're in, or that the person you care about is in, take advantage of it, because it's not going to last forever. Things will return to the way they were, and you want to get what you can out of the situation when the opportunities are there. And the opportunity is coming, but it will probably be an opportunity in disguise that looks at first like a negative or a setback. But a lot of setbacks can turn into positives, especially if you embrace them and try to turn them into a positive. So that might require some effort, but it's definitely possible. And it's important not to focus too much on the short term and how things look right now, because you never know what's going to happen. The Wheel of Fortune promises that there's always surprises in store. There's always reversals that can suddenly occur, and you just don't know. And so you got to embrace the present and embrace the future and do your best. And I think that good things are coming. They just might not look like good things at first, and they might require some effort and intention to uncover. So if you enjoyed this reading, then subscribe to see more. And if you'd like to learn about tarot cards or try some of my online guided readings, then head on over to foolskey.com where you can check that out. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.